Hello, this is Hilton Samuel of God Wants You Married. And in this episode, we'll be looking at the whole issue of, does God actually want you married? And with me, I have Ebony Empress, and we're going to have a conversation about this whole issue of marriage, Christian marriage, single Christians and the challenges they face in getting married, and should everyone expect to get married? And does God want people, everyone, to get married? So welcome to the show, Ebony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What an amazing topic tonight.
Yes.
I can just imagine that a lot of our singles who are listening will be taking some notes because they want to know, if God wants them married, how do they make that happen? So, I think it's an important conversation. I know that you have so many things that you're going to share with us. But, I want to start at the very top.
Okay, all right.
Through.
Okay.
And I think initially, just to look at some of the concerns that people have about marriage, but, what are those advantages and disadvantages? But first, why does God want us married? And
does he actually? Yes. Does he actually? I get that question all the time.
Yeah.
Does God actually want everyone married? Because what some people would say to me, particularly as I go around, I do workshops and seminars and I speak, and people ask me, does God actually want me married? And they would say things like, if it is God's will, I will get married. Now, right at the beginning of time, if we go back into Genesis, one of the first things that God announced, you know the story, that God created the world every day, he created different things, and each time he would say, it is very good. Just read the first chapter of Genesis, the first and second chapter, and he says it's very good. And then he made man. And there was man had to count the animals, and even before man did that, God said, it is not good for man to be alone. It is not good for man to be alone. And that is very significant. And if you check, when people blossom, when they grow to a certain, you may not talking about children, we're not talking about teenagers, but when you get into young adult, that first stage where people, young ladies come into their own, young men become, they all desire, they all look forward to, it's intrinsically hardwired into us that there's that program to couple up. It's not just about friends anymore. It's not just about family. People look for someone that they could actually get together with, have a relationship with, eventually marry and have a family with. So it's hardwired into us. And I think God created us that way. And second, yes.
Can I interrupt you?
Yes.
Just to say, I understand that. And I think most people who are Christians will, be nodding their heads right now and going, right, that's great. But what is the reality for people who are single today in the world that we live in right now?
Oh, yeah.
We're not living in biblical times. We're living in, economically different times, in a world that is very different from the beginning of the world.
Oh, yes.
Very different.
There was just one person you could choose.
Yes.
Adam and Eve.
Absolutely. So we're not in that world now.
We're not in that world.
There are a huge amount of challenges for people out there who are single and really sincerely looking for a partner. And when I hear people say to me that, it's a 7-to-1 ratio of women to men in the church. So how realistic is it for us to have that aspiration, given all the challenges we now face around actually not just finding someone, but actually getting that person to the church and getting the ring on your finger, okay?
And having the 2.5 children and the car possible in the garage.
Yes.
No, that's a very good question. And just to complicate it some more, or compound that some more, there was actually a time in biblical history where the challenges of getting married was equally hard to surmount. And in fact, during that time, a lot of people bring this to me. Paul says, probably we shouldn't get married at this time. There was hardship. There was, I think there was a famine on during the time of the Corinthians. And he said, maybe it's not a good time to get married. And in fact, he went on to say, maybe you should be like me and not get married, because when you get married, everything your focus is to your family. Your focus is on your husband, those people who are women, and the men, your focus is on your wife. So, if you want to dedicate yourself to the gospel, maybe you shouldn't get married.
Well, is he right?
Well,
because he didn't get married.
He didn't get married. You know, there's some theological debate about whether or not he was married. Okay. And then there was Jesus. Yeah. Jesus came and he lived a totally dedicated single life. Yeah. And these are two strong pioneers of Christianity. One actually created Christianity, and the other one popularized Christianity around the world. And then back in the Old Testament, there was Jeremiah. Jeremiah was mandated by God not to get married. Now, how do I reconcile this concept that God wants you married with these examples? And I'm going to go on to the challenges that you spoke about. Now, the first thing, they weren't totally against marriage. Right. Jesus himself promoted marriage. He started his ministry by attending a wedding. You remember that that turning water into wine? Yes. He went to, and he actually said that a man should leave his mother and father and get hooked up with his wife and start a new family. So Jesus promoted marriage. Paul too promoted marriage. He said it's better to marry than to burn, with your passion. So they weren't really against marriage. However, there are people who are born eunuchs. You know, okay. They don't have the desire. Not very many people actually. I'm not one of them. I'm married really. Right. They don't have the desire. Some people make themselves eunuchs. Some people are made eunuchs of other men. So there is a segment of our population that, you know, they don't really desire it. And there is another group of people who actually dedicate themselves, like Paul, to the gospel, to the promulgation and the propagation of the gospel. So if that's you, that's fine. When I said God wants you married, that's what we call the ideal. Right. But God won't force you if you don't want to get married. Well, if you choose not to get married. Now, the challenge comes where you want to get married, but you can't. There's no one to get married to, yes. Or there's no one to marry you. That is the challenge. Yeah. In the modern concept and in the modern context, you mentioned an interesting statistic which said that there is 1 man to every 7 Christian single available wanting to get married woman. Okay. I don't know where that came from, but it is something that has been flying around. I probably need to research if that is actually true. But the fact is that there are more women in the church than there are men. I mean, outside the church, there is actually an imbalance too, but it is exaggerated in the church. And then you want to, I think the honest question that I have to deal with is, you know, well, if everybody wants to get married, or if a lot of people want to get married, and there is this scarcity of people to get married, you know, what's going to happen? Yeah. I have some answers to that. Would you believe?
I can believe that.
Yes, I have some answers.
But maybe we want to go back to the beginning and talk about, you know, for people who are listening, you know, what are the advantages of getting married? Because we do know about the issues. We know about the problems with the numbers and the scarcity. I mean, that's absolutely clear. I think if you go to any church nowadays, you don't even need to believe the statistic, but you know the reality is.
You see it.
You walk in and there are no men. Yes. Where are the men? They're mainly women who are in the church right now. And a lot of single women who are desperately waiting or, you know, waiting on the Lord to bring that special person.
I don't particularly like the word desperate, but
they are waiting. They're waiting. And I think sometimes there is that challenge of like you know, your faith is strong and your belief is strong that the person that you want, you know, who is right for you will at some point appear in your life. But I guess for those Christian women, the question's going to be, do I wait on the Lord to bring someone to find that one person who may come in, or do I look outside and choose someone from outside to fit what I want in terms of a husband? But we can talk about that later. But
yes,
I think
because I do have a formula, a biblical formula to
I
share
know
with
you
people,
have a
yes.
formula. But I want us to focus on the advantages and disadvantages, because I think there are a lot of people out there who just will not consider marriage now. It's become a misnomer. There's no reason why I should be married. There are no advantages in it. And clearly there are some disadvantages. And I think we need to be clear what those are as well.
Okay, yes.
What are the advantages and what are the disadvantages?
Now, one of the first things in terms of having someone in your life married is obviously companionship.
Okay.
When the first man was created and God said it's not good for him to be alone, you know, he counted the animals and he recognized that there was not an animal, a creature, let's call him, someone who is similar to him. And then God put him to sleep and made. So companionship is one. Secondly, someone in your life that you could actually intimately share your soul with. There is nothing, you know, and some people talk about it. One particular lady said to me that when she comes home from work, she has a very high-powered job. She's in charge of a number of different people. She runs a business. And when she leaves all that and comes home, there is nobody to walk into the house to talk about the challenges of the day to talk about her desires, her aspirations, just to share intimately with. So marriage helps you to actually bond with someone in that way. There has been research that has been done on this, and I think there are two very renowned researchers in America. One's called Gallagher, and there's another one called Waite.
Okay.
And I think they put together, they've written a book, actually. I can't remember the name of the book, whether it's The Benefits of Marriage or whatever. You could do an internet search for it. And they have found that married people, happily married people, with stable families, the women are, both men and women are healthier, wealthier. That came as a surprise to me, because you would think with all the expense, but when you couple your resources together in terms of economics, it goes a longer way. So they're wealthier, they live longer than their single counterparts, and they're happier than their single counterparts. Right. They have also found that marriage is good for women, you know, emotionally. Now people are very surprised about this, because they always think that marriage is good for men. Yes, they actually found that marriage is good for men even when they don't love their wives. But wow. that's a different thing altogether. but marriage is good for women. Women who are married actually are not as abused as women who are just in partnerships, single women. They are emotionally more stable, and they're happier. They're happier. That is surprising. That's actually surprising. Marriage is actually good for men, but no surprise there. Marriage is also very, very significant and important for children. All of the research show that children with single parents, and I'm not having a go at single parents. In fact, I think that they're doing a wonderful job, given the circumstances that they're in. But a lot of children, they don't do well at school. They become pregnant early. They attempt and experiment with drugs, and they become very, not antisocial, but rebellious. That is not to say that that doesn't happen in marriages or couples. It does happen, but on a scale, or just generally speaking, children do better in a family unit, a married family unit, than they do outside. So marriage is good for the society on a whole. So those are the advantages of getting married, and people want to, people desire, people.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that's very idealistic, because of course there is that desire, but we also have the real statistics of marriages that fail. right?
Yeah.
So there are
lots
lots of marriages
yes.
that fail.
I mean, half the marriages fail, generally speaking, half the marriages fail, but that doesn't even count the people who are unhappy in their marriages.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, I probably need to bring some realism and reality here. Mm-hmm. And that is not because of the institution itself. People blame marriage because it becomes dysfunctional, or the people are not happy or divorced. Actually, many people, when they start their marriage, are very happy in the early stages of their marriage. They function well. Everything is hunky-dory. But somewhere along the line, something goes awry, and people blame the marriage. I don't think it is the marriage. I want to say here, and very loud and clear, love never fails. People fail at applying the principles of love, but it's not the love or the marriage that actually fail. It is the people involved. And these series are designed to help you to get the right person for you, so that the probability of your marriage lasting throughout your entire life will increase.